This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Israeli occupation forces carried out an incursion near the Sufa border crossing in the southern Gaza Strip. Nearly 40 Palestinians were arrested in this military offensive that is still ongoing as we speak. In another development, Israeli warplanes fired a missile at a home in the city of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip, killing a 14-year-old girl and injuring 10 others, including some children. According to the Israeli occupation army, the home was shelled because it has a weapon smuggling tunnel underneath it. Meanwhile, John Daggard, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in the occupied territories, said that Israel has turned the Gaza Strip into a prison. In a report presented to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, Daggard said that life for the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip is unbearable.
The Gaza Strip has turned into a prison, and the keys were thrown into the sea. These were the words of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in the Palestinian territories, describing the situation in Gaza. According to the UN report, the life for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip has become tragic and unbearable due to the Israeli blockade. John Daggard, the UN Commissioner, said that his report will test the international community on its readiness to protect human rights. What is going on in the Palestinian territories is a political and a humane test that the international community has failed. Consequently, the international community has lost its meaning to Gaza residents. According to the UN Security Council and the International Court of Justice, what Israel is doing in Gaza is a blatant violation of international laws. Daggard wrote in his report that while Israeli violations in Gaza go unpunished, Palestinians are being punished because they elected a government that was not approved by Israel and its international allies. Daggard said that the United States, the European Union, and Canada are partly responsible for the deterioration of the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. These countries, which have suspended financial aid to the Palestinian Authority, are Israel's accomplices in its blockade against the Palestinian territories. The economic and humanitarian situation has become unbearable in the Gaza Strip. The economic and humanitarian situation in the West Bank is not any better, especially in light of the Israeli separation wall. Daggard said that the separation wall would be described as an operation of ethnic cleansing if it had happened elsewhere in the world. But when it comes to Israel, this expression will be added to the dictionary of forbidden words.
وقعت أكثر من 70 شخصية إسرائيلية بينها جامعيون
More than 70 prominent Israeli activists, including scholars, writers, and army reservists, signed a proposal urging the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert to open channels for a peace dialogue with Syria, Lebanon, and the Hamas-led government in order to prevent the eruption of an imminent war. This news came amidst a series of ongoing secret peace talks taking place between Israel and some Arab countries.
A comprehensive peace in the Middle East has become one of the most used terms in the world, but the least implemented expressions on the ground. In contrast with the Arabs, the Israelis have rarely proposed or launched peace initiatives. However, this latest initiative seems to be originating from Israel and is being sponsored by some Israeli intellectuals and scholars, including several prominent writers such as Amos Oz, Abi Yeshoniwa, and Harun Sishanover, winner of the 2004 Nobel Prize for Chemistry. The initiative was also signed by several retired military and army commanders, including General Shlomo Gazat, the former head of the military intelligence services.
قد تكون في جنوب لبنان أو مع سوريا أو حتى نزاع يشمل الجزر.
Many Israelis believe that the war on Lebanon has stirred fears that another war is imminent between Israel on one side and either Lebanon, Syria or Iran on the other side. In their proposal, the Israeli peace advocates called on the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and 5 of his cabinet ministers to do everything in their power to prevent the outbreak of another war. They also urged Olmert to seize any opportunity that may help broker peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors. According to the Israeli Yehudot Ahronot newspaper, Israel and Saudi Arabia have been engaging in secret talks. It seems that Olmert opened a channel of negotiations with the King of Saudi Arabia during the war on Lebanon. Is a comprehensive peace in the Middle East possible? And if so, will it be based on the articles of Beirut, Madrid or Damascus Land for Peace initiatives? The Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said that he is ready to make war or peace, but he prefers the latter. In an interview with the German newspaper Der Spiegel, al-Assad confirmed that he wants to sign a peace agreement with Israel, but his personal opinion and hopes may change later. If Syria does not enter into peace with Israel, war will be the only solution left on the bargaining table. The Israeli Defense Minister Amir Peretz said that Syria is the key to stability in the Middle East. Will peace ever materialize in this region where many prophets had preached?
ولكن متى يخرج السلام في هذه المنطقة التي بعث فيها كثير من الأنبياء عليهم السلام من طور الموعظة إلى الحياة؟
Stop talking about Israel's relations with Syria. That was the demand of Prime Minister Ehud Olmert at the start of today's cabinet meeting. Olmert's words were largely directed at Defense Minister Amir Peretz, who has been vocal in favor of talks with Damascus in recent days. Olmert said that Israel will not hold peace talks with Syria at the present time. There is one policy on the issue, Olmert said, and that policy is no negotiations. On the issue of Lebanon, Chief of Staff Dan Khalutz told the cabinet that the time is not yet right for Israel to complete its withdrawal back to the blue line. Khalutz told the cabinet that soldiers have been instructed to shoot Lebanese stone throwers along the border if they feel their lives are in danger. In recent days, Hezbollah supporters have staged protests at the border and thrown stones at IDF soldiers on the Israeli side. Meanwhile, weapons smuggling from Egypt to the Gaza Strip is on the rise. That was the message from Shin Bet General Security Services Director Yuval Diskin, who told cabinet ministers that Israel should apply constant pressure on the Egyptian leadership to stop the arms smuggling through the Philadelphia corridor dividing Egypt from Gaza. Diskin even suggested that Israel consider lodging a complaint to the United Nations. Diskin said the security situation in the western Negev is intolerable, and Israel should reevaluate its response to the Qassam rocket fire and add an element of deterrence. The ministers also discussed increased tension and violence in the Gaza Strip and the latest actions being taken to release captured IDF soldier Gilad Shalit.
Well, the ones who increase the tension in Gaza is the Hamas leadership in Syria. They prevent the Palestinians from the release of the prisoner, which increases the tension all the time. And the focus must be on this extreme leadership in Damascus.
And a new minister was added today to the cabinet. Shas M.K. Meshulam Nahari was sworn in to serve as a minister in the finance ministry. He'll be responsible for budgets relating to education and social welfare. Egypt is demanding that Hamas immediately release kidnapped IDF soldier Gilad Shalit. Cairo made the demand in a strongly worded letter from Egyptian intelligence chief Omar Suleiman to Syrian-based Hamas leader Khalid Mash'al. Suleiman said that Shalit must be released to avoid a worsening crisis in the violence-battered Gaza Strip. The letter also demanded that Hamas cooperate fully with Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas in the formation of a national unity government, which would require Hamas to recognize Israel. The Jerusalem District Court handed down 4 consecutive life sentences and an additional 12 years to Asher Weisgan from the settlement of Shvot Rachel, who killed 4 Palestinian workers on the eve of the disengagement from Gaza last August. He also tried to murder another Palestinian laborer. Weisgan, who was working as a driver that transported Palestinian laborers, grabbed a gun from a security guard and opened fire at close range on the Palestinian men. He claims he carried out the murders in an attempt to put an end to the Gaza pullout. He was also ordered to pay each of the victims' families 228,000 shekels.
Following Lebanon's month-long war with Israel, humanitarian aid is still flowing to the country. The French Red Cross said in a statement that it would send 208 tons of health and sanitary equipment to Lebanon, with the first shipment leaving on Thursday. The organization said that 4 tons of equipment for the refurbishment of 55 ambulances and 205 hygiene kits would be delivered. The hygiene kits are enough for 100,000 people for 1 month. The UN Mine Action Coordination Center in southern Lebanon held a conference at the UN House in Beirut, dubbed Unexploded Ordnance and Cluster Bombs in South Lebanon. The aim of the conference was to outline the problem of unexploded ordnance in South Lebanon following Israel's war with Hezbollah. Speaking at the conference was UN MAC Program Manager Chris Clark, Colonel Wasim Rizza of the National Demining Office, Suha Bustani of UNICEF, and Arjun Jaim of UNHCR. All 4 speakers presented an overview of the threat cluster bombs pose on civilian lives in the south and the measures deployed to contain it.
As extensive as the landmine problem was before, as extensive as the unexploded ordnance problem and the unexploded bomb problem is, the problem now rests with cluster bombs. These are what cluster bombs look like. They're very small, about the size of a torch battery. So far, as Colonel Rizik said, combined with the efforts of the Lebanese army, the UNIFIL troops, and the mine clearance organisations, NGOs and companies, we've cleared over 40,000 unexploded items of these in the last 4 weeks.
Bahr Lebanon, in cooperation with the Lebanese government and other non-governmental organizations, is leading the cleanup operation of Lebanon's Seabed covered with oil after Israel pounded fuel tanks at the Jazeera power plant. Divers, however, have to race with times before the arrival of the winter season, as sea currents could break the oil into particles that will spread again in unpolluted areas.
Lebanese divers of Bahr Lebanon Environmental Association volunteered to clean up Lebanon's seabed covered with oil that spilled into Lebanon's Mediterranean Sea after Israel pounded fuel tanks at the Jazeera power plant, southern Beirut. Israeli bombardment of the Jazeera fuel reservoirs caused the spill of 15,000 tons of heavy oil into the sea. The spill is the biggest environmental catastrophe in Lebanon's history, and the United Nations Environmental Programme has compared it with the 1999 disaster off the coast of France, when the Iraqiya tanker spilled an estimated 13,000 tons of oil into the Atlantic Ocean. Bahr Lebanon's efforts to clean the shore and the polluted seabed coincided with the World Maritime Day, which is basically celebrated in the last week of September. Maritime Day marks the importance of shipping safety, maritime security, and the marine environment. Every day, Lebanese divers sail into the sea, hunting underwater spots where the oil is concentrated. Divers plunge in the sea facing Jazeera power plant, where they remove oil lying on the seabed, put it in bags, and take it out of the sea, where they reserve it in tanks to be treated after. So far, 70 tons of fuel oil from Jazeera and 55 tons from Seabed have been removed. All these quantities will be reserved in reservoirs and then transported to warehouses belonging to Bahr Lebanon so that they can be properly treated. Bahr Lebanon's volunteers are finding themselves in race with time as they have to speed up the cleanup operation before the arrival of winter season. Winter will make the cleaning task much more difficult, as sea currents could break the oil into particles that will spread again in unpolluted areas. Bahr Lebanon, in cooperation with the Lebanese government, is leading the cleanup operation in assistance with other non-governmental organizations such as Green Line and Greenpeace and many others.
أعلنت مصادر أمنية وطبية اليوم الثلاثاء أن 24
According to security and medical sources, 24 citizens were martyred in separate terrorist attacks in Iraq.
أدى انفجار السيارة المفخخة وعبوة ناسفة في شارع
A booby-trapped car and a bomb exploded on a commercial street, martyring and injuring a number of people. Eyewitnesses said that the double suicide attack took place near the Kuwaiti news agency in Al-Rubaiyah Street in the Al Zaytuna neighborhood. The attack martyred 12 people and injured 8 others, including a number of police officers. Also, it destroyed civilian cars. The injured were transported to a nearby hospital. Meanwhile, the police and army cordoned off the area from all directions.
جميع الاتجاهات.
The booby-trapped car exploded on Al-Rubaiyah Street, martyring and injuring 7 police officers.
كما أعلنت مصادر الشرطة أن إرهابيا انتحاريا يقود دراجة.
According to the police, a terrorist was riding a booby-trapped motorcycle and exploded himself in the Andalus Square, martyring 3 citizens, including some police officers, and injuring 10 others.
All of a sudden, a big explosion went off. There were a lot of people there, including children. Our entire group was hit. They were in Al-Andalus.
The Minister of Agriculture, Yarub Kadhim Al-Aboudi, survived an assassination attempt on Tuesday morning when 2 explosive devices detonated near his convoy in Al-Dura, south of Baghdad.
The head of the Iraqi Army Corps of Engineers said that the search and raid missions led to the discovery of 488 replacement parts and 5 weapon caches, in addition to the arrest of tens of terrorist suspects. During these operations, approximately 23,000 homes were searched in the areas of Haur and Shab.
أكد قائد الفرقة الآلية التاسعة في الجيش العراقي أن عمليات الدهم والتفتيش التي قامت بها الأجهزة.
The commander of the Iraqi Army Corps of Engineers said that the raid operations that were conducted by the Iraqi and multinational forces covered all of Baghdad. All armed militias were targeted without any exception.
ويهدد أمن المواطن ويظهر في الشوارع ويتخذ المظهر العسكري.
Clearly, anyone who is armed and threatens the security of the people and appears in the streets of Baghdad while carrying weapons is a target of these operations, regardless of what group he belongs to.
مهما كان ومن أيا كان.
Major General Bashar said that the intelligence reports confirm that the armed forces are present in Haur, Shab, and Al-Azamiyya, which explains why explosions tend to happen there.
احنا بدنا نعمل ضمن خطة معدة مقررة
We are implementing a plan that has been approved and thought through at the military, security, and intelligence levels. Yes, last week some operations took place in Fadl and Abu Hussein areas, but the situation has calmed down during the last few days. This was the result of intensive effort and meetings with citizens and leaders in the region. We convinced them to be calm and to look for peaceful solutions to their problems.
These operations come in the framework of the second phase of Baghdad security plan, dubbed Together We Move Forward. Baghdad.
The following report is about a Sadr movement in Iraq. Let's watch it.
The political map in Iraq has changed tremendously since the collapse of the former Iraqi regime and the U.S.-led invasion that had followed. Consequently, many political groups and religious movements have surfaced in Iraq. One of these groups was the Al-Sadr movement and its prominent military wing, the Al-Mahdi Army. The Al-Mahdi Army was established in July 2003 in the aftermath of the assassination of the head of the High Council for the Islamic Revolution, Mohammed Bakr al-Hakim. Its name was derived from the Grand Imam Al-Mahdi Al-Muntathar, who is considered to be the 12th Shiite Imam. Since the formation of the Al-Mahdi army, tens of thousands of Iraqis volunteered to join it. The Al-Mahdi army is not a conventional army, as its name may indicate. The shutdown of its newspaper, Al-Hawza Al-Natika, by the occupation forces has sparked fierce confrontation between its supporters and the U.S. troops. During that period, the American occupation forces had issued a warrant for the arrest of Muqtada al-Sadr, the head of the movement. On many occasions, U.S.-led coalition forces have launched military offensive operations in the holy cities of Najaf and Sadr to root out fighters and supporters of the Al-Mahdi army. There have been ongoing confrontations between the Al-Mahdi army and the U.S.-led coalition forces since the fall of Baghdad. Al-Sadr fighters and supporters have vowed to continue the resistance and to defend their country and holy shrines. One of their military strategies was to mount pressure on enemy troops by opening several simultaneous battlefronts across the country.
As God is my witness, I will continue to follow in the footsteps of the two martyred Imams, Al-Sadr and Al-Mahdi, and only death will stop me from doing so. I will continue to fight the enemy and its supporters. While making jihad, I will be wearing my burial cloth, preparing myself for death. I will continue to fight our enemy, which is the enemy of all Muslims and believers. This enemy is spreading corruption in the world. It continues to kill, mutilate, and detain innocent Iraqis and others from the rest of the world. It has been treating the international community as a game in the name of the war and terror. The only terrorists we know is the enemy and its allies.
الاحتلال إلا إنه يحاول إيصال رسالة مفادها أن المعارك التي مضت لم ولن تكون الأخيرة حتى لو لم تكن في الميدان. ومن الناحية العسكرية فجيش الإمام المهدي.
Regardless of the outcomes of the battles that took place between al-Sadr fighters and the opposition forces, the Al-Mahdi army is trying to send a message that its prior battles with the occupation forces were not the last ones. The Al-Mahdi army consists of several military units, which include dozens of armed divisions and brigades. Al-Sadr fighters do not receive regular military training because most Iraqis had already received training through a mandatory draft in the army. The movement and its military wing commands strong popularity and support among the Iraqi people. The Al-Mahdi army's concentration lies in the city of Sadr near Baghdad, Najaf, Kufa, and the holy city of Karbala, south of Baghdad. It possesses various types of weapons, including missiles and bombs. The Al-Mahdi army does not engage in direct and open combat with enemy troops, but it uses guerrilla warfare tactics instead. It also adopts a defensive strategy, meaning it does not engage in direct combat with the occupation forces, but it responds to enemy offensive operations, as was the case in the battles that took place in Baghdad and Najaf. According to political observers in Iraq, Muqtada al-Sadr enjoys a strong support among the majority of Iraqis, especially in poor neighborhoods and amongst what is often referred to as Iraqis' marginalized classes. To show its good intention, the Al-Mahdi army agreed to disarm in order to join the political process. However, the occupation forces continue to harass and intimidate its leaders, members, and supporters. The occupation forces have carried out home raids and rounded up many of its fighters in Sadr, Najaf, and Kufa in the name of uprooting the insurgency. We all remember the recent bombings that took place in the city of Sadr in the aftermath of a protest that was organized in solidarity with Hezbollah in Lebanon. For Iraq Today program, Abdullah Al-Rubiai, Al-Alam, Baghdad.
مظاهرة دافعت عن دفاع حزب الله للبنان. لبرنامج العراق اليوم عبد الله الربيعي، العالم، بغداد.
The Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad reiterated his position on his country's uranium enrichment program, despite the fact that some Iranian officials have indicated their willingness to be flexible during a scheduled meeting in Berlin this afternoon between Ali Laranjani, Iran's chief nuclear negotiator, and Xavier Solana, the European Union Supreme Representative on Foreign and Security Policy.
Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadinejad remains firm about his decision to possess a complete complete nuclear cycle for the production of nuclear energy, including uranium enrichment. This coincides with the recent developments in the Iranian-European talks. The Iranian president, who was speaking at a religious celebration, strongly criticized the United States administration without naming it. He called on it not to intervene in Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon, and Palestine, and expressed his belief that the era of empires has ended. He also said that the era of double standard policies of allowing only certain countries to benefit from nuclear energy is over.
Nations will not accept that some countries build up their nuclear arsenals, while saying that others do not have the right to develop a nuclear energy cycle because they may not use this technology for civilian purposes. The Iranians and other nations in the world reject this position.
The Iranian Foreign Minister, Munashir Muttaqi, said that he was very optimistic that the negotiations will achieve their intended purpose. This increases the possibility that Tehran will accept a voluntary and temporary freeze on uranium enrichment that may last for several months. However, Iran will continue the freeze of uranium enrichment only if negotiations progress.
We need 3 months to implement the proposals made by the West. By freezing its uranium enrichment, Iran wants to grant the West time to reach mutual agreement and to cooperate. This will eventually lead to a final solution between the two sides.
Now that Iran and Russia have set a timeline to activate the Bushehr nuclear power plant in September of next year, Iran views its negotiation position as stronger than before. The possibility that the Security Council will impose economic sanctions is at the bottom of Iran's priority list. Muhammad Noor, Al-Arabiya Television, Tehran.
For millions of people in India and Pakistan, Ramadan represents an opportunity to perform acts of charity and to strengthen the spirit of social harmony. In both countries, Islamic establishments and institutions compete to organize Ramadan programs as well as religious and educational conferences.
The month of Ramadan in India and Pakistan is unique and has common features. From here, in this large mosque in Hyderabad, the blessed month begins when millions of Muslims gather in the house of God. Outside of the mosque, preparations are being made to cook small assortments of tandoori meals. This is where special Ramadan meals are prepared, and the aromas of all types of masalas, curries, and biryanis are all mixed together. India's employment law allows Muslim employees to leave their work for 2 hours during Ramadan to break their fasts. When the sun sets, fasting worshippers gather, eat, and then go to the mosques. In this large mosque, like in other cities and villages, a beautiful harmony exists between Muslims, as can be seen in mass breakfasts or iftars prepared for travelers, passers-by, and the poor. In the markets, the lights intertwine with the shadows of shoppers, most of whom are women. The fabric stores are crowded with elderly and young women, as well as children. The lights of Ramadan have their special features, which are unlike other months throughout the year, as this woman says.
In Ramadan, we get new styles and fabrics for clothes. Most of my friends shop here.
The sunset call to prayer brings together millions of Muslims in mosques in India and Pakistan. All of them stand in one line for the special Taraweeh prayers. Both prominent and well-known religious scholars compete to spend the largest amount of time in their mosques throughout the blessed month. And everyone tries to read the entire holy book of the Quran at least once or even more.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.